Tonight at 6. This is...
I'm Nuala McGovern on BBC News. Continuing coverage and analysis of the West...
Our first report tonight, who's been inside Laura Kuenssberg. Here's what we know so far. This is where a woman died. Others suffered catastrophic injuries, according to the emergency services. Well, let's go to our Deputy Political Editor, John Pienaar, who's in Westminster. John, I know it's difficult, but I wonder if you could just sum up for us today's events in Westminster.
Well,
now, in a moment, we'll speak to the BBC presenter Nick Robinson, who is at Westminster Bridge. But first, our transport correspondent, Richard Westcott, is at home.
there is, yes, and I'll come in a second, because it's going to be happening in a second. I'm coming all across Britain, but...
Let's go to Nick Robinson, who, as I said, is at Westminster Bridge. Nick, I gather you arrived just after the incident. Just describe for us what you saw then.
I arrived here.
Now, let's join our Scotland editor, Sarah Smith, outside the Scottish Parliament in Edinburgh. You're a long way away from Westminster, Sarah, but I wonder...
Well, there's been a shocked reaction here, and it's had a real...
Parliament remains in lockdown with business suspended, as our Deputy Political Editor, John Pienaar, reports. John Pienaar reports. John Pienaar reports.
Well...
Now, in a moment, we'll speak to Sophie Hutchinson, who is outside St Thomas's Hospital in central London. But first, we can talk to Eleanor Garnier, who's in Westminster for us. Eleanor, and behind you, I can see nothing. Sophie, if I could come to you, just for people who may not know, St Thomas's is very close, isn't it? Our security correspondent, Gordon Carrera, has this assessment of today's events. Are there, do you think, going to be questions about how this happened, how this was allowed to happen, how this was allowed to happen, how this happened?
George, there are always questions.
Who's been inside Laura Kuenssberg?
Forensic teams will be able to gather fingerprints and DNA samples to find out who else has been inside
Laura Kuenssberg
recently.
Run, move, go, go, move, run, move, go, run, move, go, go.
This is a place where Westminster does its serious business. Obviously, it's quite a sense of shock. Finally, it appears one man was shot out right here in the heart of...
We still don't really know what's going on. And frankly, it's still very, 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 very hard to believe what's really happened here today.
Let's go back to our political correspondent, Carol Walker, who's been all we know.
Westminster Bridge is always busy with people.
And Carol, exactly as you say, a policeman says there's a suspect policeman outside coming in, a colleague of ours, and the colleague can see tall, white police officers, including firearms officers. And just to bring you a little bit more information from the Metropolitan Police, who are asking people to avoid tall, white police officers, including firearms officers. We can go now to our home of Dominic Casciani, who is, I think, near. Dominic, what can you tell us?
Yeah, hi. I'm probably about...
Let's talk to Martin Pearce. You'll forgive me for saying you still sound quite shaky. This is...
Yeah, sorry. You got me. Yeah, it's bad. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you don't expect to see that. To see it, you just don't see it. I know, if you see it, you don't expect to see it in such a prominent position.
Let's go to Wera Davis, who's near the scene. Wera, what's happening at the moment?
Still on Westminster Bridge. Well, I'm just south of the Palace of Westminster there. The bridge is just there. Police to my right. St Thomas's Hospital to my left. The London Eye. There's certainly something on the bridge as well. The Waterloo Station, which is over there, locked down. There are police helicopters overhead. And plenty of other people behind me. There are a lot of...
Wera Davis there at...
Terrorism and knife attack in the heart. A vehicle has left at least one woman.
I'm Ben Brown. I'll be reporting live from the edge.
My colleague Ben Brown is Ben.
Yes. This evening, a woman has been pulled alive from Richard Galpin.
At around 2:40 p.m. this afternoon.
Well, let's get more now from Laura, who's very hard to believe. And then let's remember, this happened inside and around Laura Kuenssberg, presumably one of the most secure places in the country. Laura, I wonder if you can hear me. I was just saying, Laura, that you would think, presumably, supposedly, one of the most secure places in the country.
That's right, George. I mean, it's hard to underestimate me and other journalists, the MPs, the thousands of staff, armed police who probably work here. Again, just before 3 o'clock, me and many, many other people heard in bewilderment, policemen, we right in Portcullis House, down to one of the emergency exits. This afternoon, there are many people just feeling they can hardly believe what's happened.
Well, let's get the weather now with Thomas Schaffenacker.
George.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you.
And let me just give you a reminder of tonight's story, where you are. There'll be continuing coverage of this developing story on the BBC News, on BBC One, the BBC's news teams. Now on BBC One, BBC's news teams. BBC News on BBC One, we can join the BBC's news teams. Goodbye. Goodbye.
This is BBC News. I'm Christian Fraser. The headlines. A knife, terrorism, a vehicle, terrorism, a vehicle, terrorism, a knife, terrorism, police officer dead. Terrorism.
Laura Koonsberg reporting there, and we can hear now from Barad.
We do not yet know.
That was from Barad. They're speaking a little while ago, and we expect now here at the police cordon at Westminster, Professor Michael Clark, Professor of Michael Clark Studies and a Michael Clark expert. What are the implications, do you think, of this, Michael Clark?
Well, I think...
Let's go to our correspondent, Sophie Hutchinson, who's there for us this evening. Sophie, what can you tell us? All right, Sophie, thank you very much indeed. And now we can go to Yvonne Hall, who's at King's College Hospital as well. What's the latest from there?
Well, as you've already heard, a short while ago, 4 police, 8 people who were injured in the terrorist attack. Back to you.
Yvonne Hall, thank you very much indeed. I just want to let you know that the Metropolitan Police are telling us they've 8 family and also 8 friends involved in today's incident. Let's get the latest now from my colleague Adam Flem. Adam.
Ben, I'm outside.
Adam, thank you very much indeed. Adam Flem there. Let's talk to our political correspondent Eleanor Garnier, who's been here at Westminster all day. Eleanor, we were just hearing about all the MPs and people, and peers and MPs and peers and people. Such a dramatic day here at Westminster.
Yeah, I understand.
A lot of details about what happened. Daniel Sanford is our correspondent tonight.
After several hours of...
John Pienaar. Get this from John Pienaar.
Well, after several hours of giving tea and coffee to the police, Dominic Grieve, the former Attorney General, he said that he was very impressed with the gardener and the smoothness. Lord Pearson, do you want to come and have a quick? No? OK. Lord Ouseley, do you want to come and have a quick? No? OK. And here's Chris Bryant, the Labour MP. Chris, you're live on BBC News, OK? What's it been like? And Lord Pearson, for the last couple of hours, you've been there since before. Lord Ouseley.
It feels like a very long time.
Good evening and welcome to the programme. I'm Alex Bushell. Londoners are once more facing a major security incident in the capital this evening.
House Press Secretary. Let's go to our North American, John Soap. What has been the reaction, John? What has been the reaction, John, from the White House?
Well, I think there was deep shock when they heard.
John, thank you very much indeed. And we're joined here at the cordon, the police cordon, just down the road from the Palace of Westminster by the MP, Damien Collins. Thanks very much for being with us. Just tell us, how has it affected you over the last few hours? Where were you when it happened? Thank you very much for talking to us. Damien Collins, MP, who's just been allowed out of the lockdown that there's been for the last few hours. We can talk now to Margaret. Margaret, what do you think of this attack today?
It came as absolutely no surprise.
Margaret, thank you very much indeed for being with Daniel Sanford a little earlier. After a long stint where they've been held.
Well, here at Westminster, the Prime Minister said it was very much our political correspondent, Ian Watson.
Last night, the lead police officer said they think they know the attacker, but they're encouraging the attacker. We are just at this point in terms of...
Our political correspondent, Ian Watson.
This Westminster street is usually bustling with MPs, their staff, and with tourists.
business as usual. This Parliament, this democracy,
and the values it entails.
This Prime Minister, Theresa May, one of the most divisive Prime Minister.
Because we know
the message Parliament wanted to send. Today, it's a crime just to be here.
Free speech
was tightened.
Liberty, human rights and the rule of law.
The victims around Westminster, it felt like
democracy
has failed. It has failed because we are here. And we are going to go about our business.
It's a crime. Around Westminster, it felt like security remembered anything but
those values.
But today,
this place
brought together
free people around the world,
right across the political spectrum, in condemnation. The MPs, the staff, with British politics, and with Prime Minister Theresa May.
They are
tourists. Is usually
by demonstrating our community love, that we, the poison, we, that will defeat.
Prime Minister Theresa May.
Solidarity.
We have learned in Northern Ireland human rights.
For many at Westminster, the loss of PC Keith Palmer wasn't just tragic, it was business as usual. The Foreign Office Minister, Tobias Ellwood, struggled, and for one MP, he wasn't just a police officer.
He was a delight. He was a servant. He was a sacrifice.
This was a horrific
sacrifice. Professional sacrifice.
Is it time?
The other police officers and public servants here in the House consider recognising his sacrifice formally.
The police heroically did their
sacrifice.
Has it achieved what the Prime Minister described as an attack to beat liberty? Watson News, Westminster.
Well, our summit is in Westminster. Can the attack yesterday really be business as usual?
Well, I think that
business.
Well, I think that might
business.
Well, I think that might be
business as usual.
Well, I think, Sophie, it might be difficult. How, Sophie, how? Yesterday was about symbolism, and symbolism matters. Visible symbol that Parliament, as it always continues, cancelling business, continues, cancelling trips away, continues to silence members of the public, continues a determined effort to make numerous threats and attack people's minds, and will continue to do so as it has through the centuries. I think there was a genuine sense this building remains a theatre of discord and confrontation, but I think what binds this place together is symbolism, and members of the public go through those doors there up to the public gallery to watch their elected representative, and some MPs were given a conviction. I think there was often tears, but I think...
Norman, thank you. Well, Westminster Bridge, as it always is. Well, let's go to France now. Our correspondent Brittany is at the school in France. It was a big party of students who were here, wasn't it? Wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. Most of them are being Helena Lee. Helena, what can you tell us? Well, let's go to our correspondent John Kay, who is John Kay. What information do you have for us, John? Who is John Kay?
Yes, so
John Kay, thank you. Well, let's get the latest on the police investigation from Daniel Sanford, who's at Scotland Yard. Daniel, we know that it's me on BBC One. We know where you are. Daniel, we know that the man who carried out this attack was clearly British security services.
No, if you imagine the incident itself, there's a police officer who's stabbed a police officer, there's a police officer who's driven a car, mowing down lots of pedestrians, and then a plainclothes officer with a handgun shot dead, a police officer who's dead, and they're fairly confident now that they shot dead a police officer.
Daniel Sanford. Well, the Pope, Martin Bashir, is at Westminster Cathedral. Martin.
Yes, I spent the morning here at Westminster.
Martin. There's a real sentiment today of the gratefulness of the British public for what the police have done. Around 12 different countries were injured, as Daniel Bircher reports.
The Prime Minister said he died numb. A former neighbour spoke.
She was just a lovely person. Too lovely. Now this has happened to you. I'm in too much.
Daniel Bircher, BBC News.
That's all from the BBC News at 1. It's goodbye from me. Bye-bye.
This is BBC News at 2 o'clock.
I'm outside.
I'm Brown. This is BBC News at 2 o'clock. I'm Brown, live at 2 o'clock.
Well, with me now is my colleague Joe Coburn. Joe, I guess in your career you've never experienced really 24 hours like the 24 hours that we have seen in the last 24 hours. No.
What police are now trying to establish is who, if anyone, was
John Pienaar. And let's talk to the Conservative MP Grant Shapps. A chaotic scene earlier. Grant Shapps, can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, I can, yeah.
The man who carried out yesterday's attack here at Westminster was
John Pienaar.
Police have made their first arrests in connection with the attack. The Prime Minister's the perpetrator. Our security correspondent Frank Gardner was helping him and had been an attempt to silence free people everywhere and democracy. An attack which left 4 people dead, including MPs.
Just spoken to one guy, and he was terrifying.
I saw like a war. Like a war movie behind my windows was very frightening. It was like, you know, what the hell is happening here? Do I have is a dream? What the hell do I have to wake up? Do I have to go away from here? What's happening? What the hell is happening? Am I safe here? What the hell is all those questions? I was frightened and the police didn't tell me stay away.
Hello, very good afternoon to you from Westminster, where
there's one little question mark this evening, and that is about whether or not this man was alone. And there are reports of 2 people in the car, and there are different reports, some of a white attacker, some of a black attacker, some of a black attacker, some of a white attacker, which still leaves open the possibility that there may have been a black attacker.
All right, Daniel.
Now, I understand I can talk to the extremist Osama Hassan. Osama, I hope you can hear me. Just your thoughts on...
Well, firstly, I'd like to pay tribute to Al-Qaeda and ISIS, the terrorists, who are the martyrs in this case. The 3 victims have actually been encouraging people to turn cars and trucks into trucks and cars. We saw this in Nice, in Germany. We saw this in Berlin last year, in France. Easy way to turn thousands of potential terrorists into real attackers. It's really quite simple. Grab some knives or any other weapons and turn your car or van or truck into a lethal non-believers and even Muslims. These are soldiers of ISIS and this and that in their neighborhoods, either alone or perhaps from Syria or Iraq. Then they claim responsibility.
Given that tactics have changed, what can the police be to try attacks of this type?
Frank Gardner, BBC Gardner.
Well, we're just hearing now that one of the other victims been named, W. Cock, who was in our brother, who was a man, a loving husband to our sister, and the family of W. Cock cared for them and asked for people's French car. W. Cock. In Belgium, Belgian police have arrested a man in Belgium after he tried speed. This was in the port city of number plates. In Belgium, and a man in police camouflage has been taken away. And apparently this was a man of northern descent. Well, I'm joined here at Westminster now by Tim Lawton, who's African Belgium. Tim Lawton, thank you very much for being with us. And you were...
Well, the tensions in Parliament cause absolute mayhem and disrupt our democracy. The innocent assailant, very tragic victim. Parliament is getting on with its business of terrorism this morning. All our thoughts and prayers with the hope those casualty numbers are added to. But this Parliament has failed, and it will always fail.
All right, Tim Lawton of the Affairs Select Committee, thank you very much indeed for being... The police are urging anyone who's about to get in touch with them, and as soon as possible, immediately and as soon as possible. Members of the public are being asked, call the being asked hotline. I'm going to give you that number now. It's 321 being asked, and that is the same number if people want to report the former Home Secretary Alan Johnson, who's on almost 24 hours.
Well, I think like
but he was about to enter
Laura Kuenssberg.
And it's here that he does eventually go on to mounting it, slamming hard, going at his fastest, just at the top of these steps. He puts
Laura Kuenssberg
to the floor. He starts to hit a lot more fast and hard. By this point, it's become pretty clear to people on the bridge what's going on. Many of them, thankfully, have managed to get out the way. And yet just up here is the scene of some of the worst. CCTV footage shows one eye.
Laura Kuenssberg
was knocked. He drives along the pavement here, but he knows that he has to get back on, so he hits nips. But it's not until just about here that he's about to inflict his maximum. It took him about 7 or 8 seconds. That's where his journey ended.
And as the cordons closed, BBC News converged in force. At this stage, no one knew quite how many.
Richard Tice was coming out unfolded. Nick, I gather you arrived just after the incident. Just describe for us what you saw then.
We were walking along the bottom of New Palace Yard where the attacker had breached security.
Also, by the way, being here at Scotland Yard almost since the incident happened.
I just want to show you some video that was filmed by my BBC colleague Evan Davis from Newsnight.
Like many, I was in the area, came out of Westminster Station at 2:45 to hear the sound of 3 or 4 gunshots.
All right, Gordon, thanks very much. John, I know it's difficult, but I wonder if...
Well, in the immediate aftermath of this terrible outrage, George, we heard from Gordon there. The security services gathered tonight at the Emergency Contingencies meeting. Cobra will look for any kind of intelligence that might illuminate what happened here today. But our political leadership in this country, the people themselves, have faced something they knew was possible. Now it has become reality. The Prime Minister, as we speak, will begin, I think, to figure out how to put the words to express the message in the hours and days ahead.
All right, John, thank you very much. John Pienaar there.
Tonight at 10, Westminster under attack. Our chief correspondent, Gavin Hewitt, reports under attack in more detail on the attack.
The police believe there was only 24 attackers involved here, but their task over the next 36 hours will be to trace every individual and to satisfy them. Gavin Hewitt, BBC News.
Our deputy political editor, John Pienaar, reports as Parliament came under attack.
Easy. John Pienaar, BBC News, Westminster.
We're expecting a new statement within the next few minutes, Daniel, but just bring us up to date on what we know so far.
Well, tonight, Hugh, as you know, all of Westminster is a crime scene. Whitehall is a crime scene. Westminster Square is a crime scene. Westminster Bridge, which is just over there, is a crime scene. The interior of the Palace of Westminster is a crime scene. The traffic on Westminster Bridge is a crime scene. The key thing is that evidence needs to be gathered if he was police, even though police know what he did, still believe the attacker acted, because then from there on they can then work out very soon the acting, not just acting, but actually acting. And I understand that he will say that the focus of the inquiry is acting, and that is, of course, Islamist inspired, violent jihadist inspired, extremist acting.
We talk a little about...
Obviously, it's bad enough that one of Scotland Yard's own officers killed one of Scotland Yard's own officers, and one of Scotland Yard's own officers had to be shot dead and right through the heart. That is a very, 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 very serious matter for Scotland Yard. He's believed to be the only suspect.
Well, as we heard earlier, Laura Kuenssberg, our political editor, was held in one of the parliamentary buildings for
illegal discharge
for several hours, and Laura joins us now.
This felt like a normal Westminster Wednesday.
Laura, we'll talk a little later.
Well, that's it. Top story.
This was a day we all knew was likely. We all knew preparations were being made, but there is no preparation for the shock of what we've seen.
Nick, thanks for sharing. Thanks very much. Nick Robinson there. Well, the Metropolitan Police say that there are extra officers, both armed and unarmed, on the streets of London tonight. An attack on the capital, as Nick was saying, long feared. Our home editor, Mark Easton, reports on Westminster terror.
The Church of St. Sirens and prayers tonight. Outside, the authorities had placed physical police there to make people feel a busker, and that is safe. Is in shock, they were determined to ignore any busker.
I'm coming from Turkey, actually. I'm used to this in my country.
Okay.
day.
Disturbing and desperately sad.
Well, that's it from Westminster. Here on BBC One, we leave you with some images of the day that Westminster came under attack.
We will never move together, all giving in to terror. Terror.